Hello and welcome to the Comparesoft Facilities Management Podcast. In this episode, we're looking at what it actually takes to maintain over 700 high street retail stores and how facilities management shapes the customer experience in fashion and optical retail. Today, I'm joined by Christopher Lloyd, who manages facilities across the EssilorLuxottica Group in the UK, covering brands including Ray-Ban, Oakley, Sunglass Hut, and Vision Express. Chris brings a hands-on perspective to supplier management, integrating new CAFM systems, and managing the very different demands of fashion retail and optical healthcare environments. We'll explore how FM teams prioritise thousands of work requests, why store presentation is a facilities issue as much as it is a brand one, and what it takes to maintain consistent standards at scale. Chris, it's great to have you on the podcast. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you very much. So Chris, when people hear facilities management, they often think about, fixing faults, managing maintenance tickets. But when you're overseeing 700 high street stores, what does the reality of this role look like on a day to day?
I would say that it's about constant prioritization. So with so many requests coming in from different areas of the business, you have to have a robust structure behind those requests. I think that categorizing that into certain aspects, so health and safety, operational disruption, customer experience, down to the sort of the nice to haves almost, is kind of the bread and butter of that sort of element of managing those jobs. But then also ensuring that you triage those jobs with a strong team behind you. So, for example, we've got main service providers that we use who act as that vital help desk, to be able to make sure that we can be informed and kept up to date on exactly what's going on. So alerts with anything that is considered to be super important or an emergency, but then also down to how do we review all of those other jobs and how do we make sure that they do get addressed, but they get addressed appropriately and at the right time, and by what type of approach do we take with it? So is it something that needs to happen straight away? Is it something we can incorporate into a bigger project maybe? So there's different areas that we do it really, and it's all about, I think, just balancing that urgency versus impact more than anything else.
And you sort of touched on it there, like the nice to haves, the priorities. You must get thousands of, requests coming through your ticketing systems. How do you go about managing and prioritizing such a large volume of incoming requests? And how do you decide sort of what gets your immediate attention?
Yeah, and I think it's just going back to that sort of um, what do you categorize as an emergency? What do you categorize as an urgent job? And I think that's different dependent on the company in some aspects when you start going down that list. But I think ultimately, as an FM professional, we are heavily involved in health and safety and the impact that our built environment has around the people that are adopting and occupying that space. That you've always got to put health and safety at the forefront of everything. So it starts with that, and then you start looking more into, right, okay, what are we here to do as a business? And in our aspect, we're here to serve customers. We're here to sell a product and to provide a service. So the next priority for us is ensuring that that experience is protected. And then beyond that, you're looking more at a case of how do we develop? How do we improve process? So that it's not just about whether it's safe, whether it works. It's more about how do we make it work better. So I think as soon as you start getting that sort of priority structure in place, then that's when you can really start to manage exactly what's going on, what's happening, and when do we expect to resolve it by, essentially. So going back to the example with emergency work orders, we've set up two processes that will help elevate the urgency and elevate the awareness of those through alerts, and through ring-fenced teams who will then manage and apply hypercare essentially to those jobs. So I think that's what it's about mainly, is looking at it and thinking, right, how do we manage something that is super urgent? But then also, how do we still acknowledge something that's just a nice to have?
Mm. You mentioned there, so it's the priority is health and safety. Would you say that's more the issues that frequently appear in retail environments, and and how does that get tagged when there's so many ticket requests coming through?
So in regards to the health and safety aspect of it, so what we do is we will triage those jobs when they're reported from a store. So there
Mm,
are a series of questions that are asked to establish actually what is the urgency of this job. And that really helps in being able to understand how quickly we can respond or how quickly
mm,
we need to get a contractor out there. Um, so I think that in regards to being able to identify those issues, it's those important questions that are asked and those probing questions that are asked at that point that really guide what sort of priority we should put something on. So we have a coding system of priorities that they will get allocated dependent on what the answers to those questions are. There's a difference between a roof that's got a giant leak in it and it's flooding a store compared to a leak that's dripping into a bucket, right?
mm.
Uh, but those two situations could be described as exactly the same thing. We've got a leak. So it's about just making sure that we delve into that detail, and then beyond that, we then make sure that the right people are aware of what the severity is of that.
How do you ensure that detail? So say if two tickets are raised, we have a leaky roof, exactly the same. How do you differentiate between, okay, this one's taking priority over this one's leaking into the bucket, this one's leaking into the store?
It is very much a sort of a scripted triage dependent on what they select. So you start with an area of a store. Tell me where the problem is. Tell me what the problem is. Tell me what the piece of equipment is in that area and what the problem is with that piece of equipment. That's the very basics of being able to understand what the situation is. And
Mm,
then beyond that, dependent on their answers, is where you start to tailor those questions to that specific problem. So we will have in there, for example, is it a contained leak? Is it an uncontained leak? So it's giving us that good indication there as to, could this cause a bigger problem, or is it something that we've got under control?
mm,
Similarly, when we're looking at a lighting issue, have we got one light out in a store? Have we got five lights out in a store? Somebody just saying that they've got a couple of lights out in a store, or our lights aren't working, doesn't give us that full picture. So we need to make sure that we interrogate or triage those requests so that we get a full picture of exactly what's going on. And another way that really helps as well, very simple one. We're looking after so many stores at the moment that you you can't be everywhere all at once, right?
mm,
So we make sure that the supporting evidence comes with that as well, and documentation. So have you got any pictures of the situation
yeah.
is such a simple thing to ask, but it's amazing how much light it sheds on a situation just by getting that. I had a perfect example actually, only a couple of nights ago, where we had a request come in. A sprinkler head has been activated in one of our stores, and as soon as you get the video through, um, panic ensues.
Yeah,
Um, and then 4 hours later, I got some other images through of a clean store, rectified as if nothing had happened.
amazing.
And that type of information, and being able to pass that information on to the likes of key stakeholders in the business who have
Mm,
got the vested interest of the operational well-being of that store and the well-being of the people in there, you'd be providing them those two stories and that evidence. It informs them, but then it also reassures them. So it's a combination, I would say, of those two key elements: is how do you triage a job, what questions you need to ask, compared to how do you then communicate that information within our business.
mm. Yeah, and I think there's that that saying where people really don't know where maintenance or facilities management is until something bad has gone wrong.
100%. If we're doing our job right, nobody hears about us.
So, Chris, you're working with fashion brands like Ray-Ban and Oakley, where store presentation is critical. how does that influence your facilities management decisions in these retail stores?
I think that's where we sort of almost go back to that prioritization piece in some ways. Um, it's it's a it's a known it's a known fact that there are tiering systems throughout retail.
Hmm.
There are flagship stores, there are high turnover stores, so on and so on. And so we have to be very mindful of this. Now, there are ways in which that we can we can support this tiering process. One of the key ways is um, proactive maintenance. If we've got flagship stores and stores that are going to be in the public eye and brands that are very recognizable from a global level,
Mm,
and an expectation that is a lot higher as well from those types of luxury brands, we can look at implementing preventative maintenance that just helps along with the appearance of that store. And it's one thing that we've heavily implemented throughout our estate is if we've got um, if we've got the requirement where a store needs to be reviewed on a more regular basis, then we've got those reviews put in place to make sure that certain aspects of the store, the aesthetics of the store,
mm,
are looked after um, in a very regular, preventative manner. So we do tailor our preventative maintenance from almost what you could consider to be the essential package, and the compliance package where we're ensuring that legislation and statutory compliance is covered, right the way up to right. Well, if a light goes out in this store, it's a big deal, and we need to get it sorted
mm.
right away. So there is definitely a tiering system that we follow that suits with the business needs. Definitely.
Okay, and your like you said, your PPM goes into that tiering system as well. So you're scheduling PPM more often in these sort of stores and maybe other stores that you've got.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there are it's very difficult to be able to manipulate reactive maintenance at such large scale
Mm,
because you have to standardize the response times and the completion times of something like that when you're looking at an estate of this size.
yeah.
Otherwise, there's no way of being able to properly manage that. But there is certainly ways in which we can look to reinforce the support of one location by implementing more regular planned visits to capture anything before it becomes an issue.
Mm,
Um, and then similarly, another approach that we take is we have not just our main service providers, but we also have specialist suppliers and contractors who we can call upon regionally if something that's quite delicate is required beyond the expectations of a service level agreement.
yeah. Um, on top of the sort of fashion brand led stores, you're also looking after the Vision Express stores, which have more of a healthcare component to them. Does that change how facilities need to operate compared to more traditional retail environments?
There is definitely an impact there, especially regarding the NHS. Obviously, we have certain
Mm,
requirements to be able to benefit from um, how we operate as an optician. There is audits that will be carried out, and expectations set by the NHS. So, um, yes, there is different ways in which we look to ensure that we provide certain um, aspects of the store. For example, we have a requirement to have certain assets within test rooms so that it conforms and it complies with NHS requirements. Whereas when you're looking at something that is a purely a sunglass store, um, that is a retail fashion environment compared to a practicing opticians.
mm,
Um, so I think that there's definitely this sort of not divide, I would say, but there's definitely this difference between the two stores in how we would um, operate and how we would look to maintain even just the basics of the fixtures and fittings in that store. And then on top of that, obviously, with us having the testing capacity within these stores, there's equipment that comes along with that. We have a specialist department who look after that equipment and make sure it's maintained and managed. And so we support that team quite heavily to make sure that the two departments have so many transferable actions and skills, they blend quite nicely with each other in being able to work and collaborate.
So, Chris, with so many contractors and suppliers to manage, how do you keep on top of it? Is there a system you have that continuously monitors them, monitors their performance, and how do you stay in communication with them as well?
Very structured, to be honest. I'm ex-military, so for me, I am controlled
You're
and
on it.
reassured by structure and process. I'm all just ones and zeros, really. So yeah, I think that to me is, I think as well, it depends on how much do you need to interact with a contractor.
Mhm.
There are some contractors I'm speaking to on virtually a daily basis. There are other contractors I speak to on a quarterly basis. So I think when you're setting out those reviews, it's very similar to work orders. Prioritize the contractors that cause the most impact and deal with the most things, and then from there, sort of a grading system. Um, and so that's kind of the way that I initially keep communication live. For example, the likes of our main service providers, there are multiple types of meetings throughout the week, ranging from a simple catch up on a Monday as to, right, what did the weekend have happen and
Mm.
what does the week ahead look like, to sort of reviewing quotes and stepping through the, few 10, 20, 30 quotes that might have come through in the last day or two. So that is the initial sort of structure that I work by, and then that's then graded into the types. So obviously, you're going to have your quarterlies, 6 monthlies, and
Mm.
annuals in there as well for that. Um, then there's sort of almost holistic ways that we will look to review just by general feedback of stores. Um, what are we hearing through these stores? They're essentially our customer. So what are their opinions, their interactions, their experiences like with the engineers that are coming on site, with the response times? Has something been fixed properly the first time?
Yeah.
Um, and so being able to go out to stores and speak with our store managers and store colleagues and regional managers on, one of the key questions that I like to ask is, um, what's one of your frustrations? Where are you not happy at the moment? Um, and you very quickly start hearing that there is a trend and a pattern if there's an issue. So it's very reliable in that regard. And we've very recently, with the implementation of our new CAFM system that we're now going to be self-managing, um, we have a feature on there where our stores can instantly review contractors, so that they can give live feedback on not only jobs but just the contractor in general and their experience. So another area of sort of net promoter score, if you will, on what they think of our contractors and how their experience is with them. Um, so yeah, it's a blend really from
Mm.
feedback to trends to regular communication with the contractor. So you're getting sort of both sides of the story, so to speak.
Yeah. Chris, you just touched on it then, a new CAFM system, and my eyes lit up. I'm really intrigued to figure out, what sort of tools you're using to manage your day-to-day operations. Could you just talk me through this new CAFM system, like what it's replacing and really what you're trying to get out of it?
100%. So two of the key things that and I think most of the FM will strive towards in the industry is transparency and communication. FM is it can be a very messy environment, and a lot of the times you're not looking to fix everything first time perfectly because the reality is that's not going to happen.
Mm.
Um, the key is to set expectations and make sure you communicate clearly. Having that structure in place provides reassurance that the activities that are being requested are being addressed also. So the the current setup, that we have with one of our main service providers is a self-managed CAFM system that we have implemented, which has taken over what was the historic approach of having a vendor-led CAFM system,
Mhm.
where we only have, as a company, limited exposure really to actually what's going on. We have client-facing dashboards that will advise us of KPIs so that we can understand what SLAs are being achieved, what aren't, where prioritization of jobs is going, and we can see trends. But the stores can't see a lot of this. The store reports a job and then gets an update from the contractor, and that's a very limited interaction.
Mm.
The next time that they hear from that contractor, usually the engineer's asking to come on site, turns up on site, um, and even then, is there follow up? Is there remediation beyond that? So having a self-managed CAFM system has given us that control and that ability to be able to tell a story on each job. We link our current supply chain in with the CAFM system. We link the stores in with the CAFM system so that then you've got free-flowing communication between the two, and you can see that there is an expectation for the job to be attended to and closed by. There are activities that have happened on that particular request, whether that be simply an update on progression, a status change, maybe a quotation has been uploaded. All of these bits of information previously, because again, with an estate this sort of size, having that sort of um, time to be able to update every store individually would be
Mm.
impossible for a small group of people. Yet, if you're able to use the efforts of everybody involved through one system, it makes it so much easier to start painting a picture of a timeline of exactly who's done what, when has it been done, and what's the expectation of getting it sorted. So that's what this system provides. It provides that notes area, that reference point of what the expectation is for starting and completing works. And also, it gives them the ability through this to be able to review those contracts as well. So it's just opening up that channel of communication a lot more, but also making sure that those clear expectations are set out so stores aren't wondering when
Mm.
somebody's going to turn up to fix my leak.
So that transparency for each store, that was the main, requirement going into this new system.
I would say, yeah, the transparency and communication was the two biggest benefits um, in regards to the implementation, with other benefits that are still yet to be fully explored, I think. I mean, the implementation of price comparison through intelligence supporting on the system. So basically, the amount of information you feed into it, it will then use that information to be able to guide you on future requests that come in from a price comparison
Mm.
perspective, which again is information that previously you would have to have years and years of experience in facilities management to know, oh, well, it costs X amount of money for this and it costs that much
Mm.
for that. So this is expensive. Whereas now we're not solely relying on somebody's memory or expertise to be able, or experience to be able to tell us that. We're having the information stored, used, and then delivered back to us as an instant tool of feedback to tell us you need to challenge this, or that's a fair price, you can continue. So there's that sort of added value that it brings to it that before didn't seem like it was um, going to be an aspect or even a consideration. We were focusing so much on the communication side of it
Yeah.
that when you start implementing these new these new aspects into it, these new tools, it's just increasing that level of service that we can provide, really.
And I suppose that goes back to the hypothetical we took earlier. If there's a leaky roof, one is dripping into a bucket, one's dripping into a store, you now understand that, okay, the one that's dripping in the store, this is what's going to look like in the next 3-4 days if we don't resolve this instantly, if we don't prioritize this. You have a better understanding of that now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would say that um, in regards to specific scenarios of a request or an incident that's happened, um, from a um, managerial point of view to that supplier, we would be aware of this regardless,
Mm,
whether we're using our system or whether we're using a supplier-led system. I think that where it's really provided the insight is to the stores and to the people that are getting this service. It's,
mm,
it's they're they're so focused on what their role is, quite rightly. They
mm,
are there to provide a service to our customers as um, EssilorLuxottica UK throughout all of our brands. They're not there to manage contractors coming in trying to solve issues with the
yeah,
store. Our job.
yeah,
So if we can provide them that information and keep providing them more updates and more relevant communication about what's going on in their store, it's saving them time chasing it being in the dark, and it's giving them that reassurance that it's being handled.
yeah. And when it comes to implementing a new system, there's bound to be a few challenges. There's bound to be a few hiccups along the road. Have you come across anything like that? I'm presuming in training store managers and how to use these new systems.
100%. Um, you know, you want to set out that you roll any sort of new initiative out
Mm,
as best as you can. There are always going to be hiccups. We've had part of the estate go live so far where we've had inquiries back on certain aspects. We've had difficulties in certain aspects. And I think the key is, how do you manage that? How do you make sure that you address those issues? And that's the key thing is, we know it's never going to be absolutely perfect, but let's make sure that we address any issues that do arise of it, learn from it, so
mm,
that then if we've got other elements that we're rolling out later on, these issues can be addressed. So I think that there's definitely um, there's definitely going to be learnings and development in any type of rollout. You're never going to do it 100%. Anybody that does, um, I, I take my hat off to them. But um, I would say that there is, if you should always be able to learn something from providing something new, and we definitely have. We've fed back on quite a number of things, and especially development areas. A little one, for example, only today um, was regarding contractors being able to attend certain types of shopping centres. The additional requirements and um, the additional permits that are required for that. Um, and how do you manage that? Well, a lot of the time that was very much the onus on the store to
mm,
make sure they do what they need to do so that the centre can grant permissions to the contractor to start their process. Um, New processes like that come and go all the time in shopping centres, airports, wherever it might be, where you've got a higher regulation and that heightened level of safety and security. So we've found ways now that we can start notifying stores of this on our new system, and we can just help them that little bit more information to advise them or remind them that this is part of that process and this is what needs to happen. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits towards it, definitely. And also there's I mean, one that I completely forgot to mention is the the ability to be able to choose who we assign jobs to. Whereas previously it was very much a blanket approach to this, where you've got your main service providers, let them tackle it and deal with the situation. Where actually we're finding there's a lot of benefit in making sure that you are appropriate with where some of these requests go, and maybe just think a little bit um, more tailored towards what benefits there could be by
mm,
using a regionalized contractor um, to address some issues that might have a high impact if not addressed quicker, or may just need that additional level of hypercare or specialism to make sure that the job's fixed first time. So it's given us that ability to be able to redirect into certain areas where previously we might have had um, an initial attendance that could have failed because there was a certain requirement to that work that unfortunately the attending contractor was unable to achieve at that time. If we can pick that up early and we
Yeah.
can redirect it to somewhere else that is more appropriate, again, it's just increasing that first time fix, providing that reassurance to stores, and just making sure that we're closing out jobs as quickly as we can, but as efficiently as we can as well.
And that first time fix, that's the metric you're really looking at. That's the main KPI for situations like this when you're assigning,
Yeah,
contractors.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got the basics, which I think are your attendance and completion SLAs.
Hmm.
Um, but I think once you get beyond understanding and achieving a certain level of SLA, um, there's got to be almost like an improvement somewhere with that contractor. There's got to be continuous development with them. And the first time fix is something that a long time ago I was advised that um, it was the other way around, and that a first time fix determines the completion SLA.
Mm,
Um, and I soon came to learn that actually, if that's not managed correctly, it's very far from the truth.
mm,
And that actually making sure that you get the right trade there and the job is completed satisfactory the first time is is the key to ensuring the completion SLA. Um,
Would you say it's the more of the less revisits metric then?
100%,
Mm,
definitely. Um, the amount of times that we were scratching our heads over wondering why uh, a first time fix SLA was first time fix KPI was so high, sort of near 90% on these first time fixes. Yet we're seeing this completion SLA and the satisfaction of stores a real low point,
wow.
thinking, what's going on here? Finding out that actually this is due to, yes, okay, you're advising it's a first time fix, but is it addressing the root cause of the issue?
Mm,
Are you actually stopping this problem from reoccurring 6 to 12 months down the line, or are you just putting a plaster over it
mm,
and saying that you fixed it first time? And that's where we've really identified that the benefit of that core triaging of jobs and making sure it goes to the right contractor, and we're not having someone essentially try to tick a box on a KPI. They go in there to fix the problem.
yeah. And
Um,
this new system is going to help you address that.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. This the benefits that this brings for us to be able to provide long-term solutions to what previously would be repeat offenders, is one of the key benefits that we're finding on our side of the platform at the moment.
And is this rollout nearly finished, Chris? How long you got left on it?
So we're anticipating that the completion of the rollout, I would anticipate by probably end of May, we should be all done and dusted. In regards to aftercare as well, and making
Mm,
sure the stores are completely comfortable with the system. We should have completed rollout, I would say April. Everything should be all provided to stores. But we've just got to make sure that we don't stop there, and that those following weeks are quite vital to make sure that
mm,
it lands really well and that the engagement is as high as it can be to really help stores buying. Because I mean, the last thing that you want is that you try and deliver something this sort of size to this sort of state, and people don't buy into it.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just making sure that um, we're providing the benefit and showing the benefit as well.
So a few busy months ahead for you, Chris.
100%, definitely. Any other way.
Excellent. So I just want to save this last question here for really getting good insights and advice from you, Chris. If someone was stepping into a role similar to yours, they're managing hundreds of retail stores for the first time, what advice would you give them?
Um, I think I'd probably go back um, to what I mentioned earlier, which is FM is messy. Don't try and fix everything perfectly all the time because you'll end up just tying yourself in knots. Um, it's about ensuring that the communication with key stakeholders and the expectation set is clear. And that's on both sides. That's with the contractors that you're managing, and that's with the stakeholders that you're communicating with within your business. If you can keep those two aspects clear, transparent, honest, I don't think you'll go far wrong. You can start applying the right pressures in the right areas then.
Excellent, Chris. You've been a brilliant guest. You've given us such a really practical look at what goes on behind the scenes of such a large scale retail operation. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, not a problem.